Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, episode number 41. We've turned 41 here. Level's turned 50. Hey, man, just you survive your 50th birthday bash?
I did, yes. I'm an old man officially. I kind of really was an old man. I'm just older, but no, all good. Yeah, I guess age is a state of mind. But yeah, I did have to go to the eye doctor recently. The old eyeballs not working as good as they used to, so I had to get it up on the old prescription there. So this is what they tell me, man. When you get older, this things just stop working as well as they used to. So anyway, but yeah, no, all good, man. I appreciate you saying that.
For sure. And that's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. We are into the summer months, so some topics here and there. One big topic that came up this past week was the announcement of a starting quarterback. Not necessarily a surprise on the who, but timing was just, I don't know that anybody expected you to get this sort of announcement this past week, but Tyler Shough named the quarterback for Texas Tech. And I think anybody in Lubbock, Texas, not too surprised by that.
This is just a hunch here, but yeah, the timing is peculiar, and I think it was a Friday afternoon in the summer,
yeah.
And I think, but let me talk you through it. Here's what I think. Again, my 2 cents. Here's what I think happened a little bit, okay. and I could be off a bit, but I bet I'm not too far off. I think the fact that you make an announcement is being very respectful toward Tyler Shough. I think he'd won the job. I think everybody kind of had known that. I think, but by doing it on a Friday afternoon early in the summer, you're also being very respectful to Baron Morton.
Okay.
I think you're not trying to, one, make anybody look bad. And I don't think Shough is somebody that needs the bright, shiny 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, press release to where it gets a lot of attention and it's big news and all that. I think most people probably realize that Shough was going to be the starter. I think this does pave the way for him to probably go to Big 12 Media Days and represent your team and kind of start to be a face of the program here for the next, 6 to 10 months or whatever it is. But I don't think it's a surprise. I think, and I hope people don't think that this was anything that Baron Morton did. And I just think Shough was going to be very difficult to beat out, especially with the way that he ended last season. And we got to see kind of a healthy, and now Tyler is, he's added some weight. I think he's kept his speed, and I think he's an alpha. We know this. So yeah, I was it kind of got snuck in there a little bit as far as the announcement. Not a lot of fanfare there, but again, I don't think Tyler needs it, and I think you're trying to be respectful there to Baron Morton as well.
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah, what do you think about my theory? You think I'm?
No, I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
Honestly, for as far as our daily radio shows and stuff we do, we hadn't even had a chance to talk about it to the point we're recording this. So it was just such odd timing with that Friday afternoon announcement, because usually that's news dump time. That's when you get out news that you don't want to be super talked about or popular or whatever. So I think the theory is probably spot on. We're trying to respect Baron Morton, but this was Tyler Shough's job. So it just seems kind of strange, because most of the time, if you're going to announce a starting quarterback, it comes right after spring, right?
It does, but this is also, Woodman, this is also a bit of a new era with the portal.
Sure it is.
And so some of that timing is a bit different than, again, who knows the reasoning? It doesn't really matter.
Sure.
I think, again, nothing has really changed since the last time we talked about the order of how I thought it would go. but we do can kind of sink our teeth into it in it being official. And I'll tell you, most of those guys on that team all knew, already knew, and
Right.
they also know that they can win with Baron Morton too, because they've done it. A lot of those guys. Yeah, he's won a Big 12 game and all that, and played really, really well against Oklahoma State as well. Almost got 2 of them, but so I think everybody knows the deal.
Yeah, obviously, Shough, the big stat on him, he's 8-1 as a starter at Texas Tech. The problem has just been getting him on the field enough at Texas Tech because of the injury issues.
Yeah.
So
that
and
8-1 is come over 2 seasons.
Yeah, so obviously that's what you're looking for and hoping for this next year. You mentioned adding some size, but maintaining the speed. I think that surprised a lot of fans, including myself, of how much he was utilized with his legs last year. Do you think that's something that absolutely continues for under Coach Kitley, or is that just a necessity in the offense because of offensive line struggles last year? Do you think we see that continue in 2023?
I think QB run game is here to stay.
Okay.
In the game, and I think in the Big 12 and at Texas Tech. I don't think you will. Now, I am in no way suggesting you major in it. I think if you look at the analytics or you look at when it's used, it's mostly in the red zone. It's mostly when you want to really,
Sure,
protect the football and avoid a costly turnover. And, I think the QB running game. Now, granted, one of these injuries that Shough has had was him getting hurt going into the end zone in Austin, Texas. But I don't think that I see them like majoring in it. But I do think it is a component. That's just the way the game is played. I think if you don't have it, you're playing the game with one arm tied behind your back a little bit. I think it's got to be a threat. I think it would be a threat with Barron. And again, they're going to look a little bit different. And Donovan looked a little bit different too.
Sure.
When he was here. But I think QB run game and the threat of it is absolutely still going to be a part of things. But again, I think you just need to understand what that looks like, because it may be, once every 3 or 4 drives, or maybe it's 4 times a drive, and then it could be all over the map. But I don't want anybody to think that like one of your quarterbacks is going to get 20 carries a game. I don't envision that. No.
Right. Well, not intentionally, at least.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So now we are, as I mentioned, into the summer months. For people like me that are recruiting novices, well, just kind of scratch the base level of it. What does this mean? What are we looking for in terms of these camps and that sort of thing? What kind of visitors are you getting during the summer months? What is the recruiting like for Coach McGuire and staff right now?
So you just want a blanket?
Yeah, just blanket kind of just overall what's going on with the recruiting, not necessarily specifics of who and all of that.
Yeah, well, choices. As you and I are sitting here talking, Texas Tech has basically just finished up an official visit weekend. Okay. Now, I'm still, my brain is still not there on the new recruiting calendar because I was, involved in this business for so many years. Yeah, the way it used to be when the first Wednesday in February was like the Holy Grail, and the early enrollee, was like the exception. And like, oh my gosh, you've got some of these kids are going to be in here at semester and all that stuff. Yeah. And again, as we know, things have changed massively. And so back in 2017, they started the early signing period. I think it was 2017. But anyway, since then, recruiting visits have gone on you're right now in the sweet spot. You had official visits in last weekend, the weekend that we are just coming off of now, and then you'll have some in next weekend. That's really that sweet spot. And then July is a very quiet month. It's almost the month where they allow coaches and recruits to, save themselves from themselves. So you're not recruiting and visiting and hosting and all that 365 days a year. This July is almost like, okay, please get away from your job for a couple of weeks at least.
Yeah.
Hey, hey, head coach, let these assistant coaches go take a vacation with their families or a staycation or whatever.
Sure.
And so because of these official visit weekends, you also don't have as many camps and combines going on at this point like you used to as well either, when really this was the recruiting that was going on in June. And then you're like, okay, we loved what we saw. We'd love to get you in on an official visit, in the fall. And, you can still have official visits in the fall when you want to have somebody in for a home game or whatever. But so much of what the heavy lifting of a recruiting class is being done right now. And you're, because of that early signing period in mid-December, you're trying to put the bulk of your recruiting class together in these weeks and this month. And if it hadn't already been done, like if you didn't do it during the spring recruiting period when you got to get out on the road and offer kids and those kinds of things. So, and a lot of the kids that I think this particular weekend that came in, a lot of them were already committed. But that's kind of just in a nutshell, kind of what that looks like for fans that are following recruiting or paying attention. And, Joey and his staff have they just crush it. I mean, they just have been so buttoned up in this area. Their process to evaluate their ability to land kids that come visit, the ability to land or get big time players and prospects to come visit, their ability to identify an off the radar prospect that can flat out run or whatever. He's got, various measurables that they're interested in. And so it's fascinating to watch them go to work with this facet of the program, which is a huge part of what they do. It's not just the X's and O's in the fall or coaching spring football or announcing a starting quarterback. It is getting dudes on campus and then getting them to say yes and then getting them to play hard for you. But it starts on weekends like this one.
So that's the high school level recruiting. What about the transfer portal? Are we kind of past that point of the transfer portal and seeking players, or is Tech still going after a certain position group, or where are we at there?
Window is closed, so you don't have to worry about anybody getting into the transfer portal. If they did, I'm not even sure if they're allowed to. But either way, if somebody were to get into it, I don't even know sure if 100% sure if they're allowed to get in right now. But they wouldn't even be able to be eligible like in this fall. Like you're automatically going, I'm not gonna play this next year if I want to leave here really, really bad. But I do think, and so anybody that was in the portal prior to the window closing, if you were in there back before May the 13th, 14th, somewhere in that general area, I think it was. I have to go back and look at specifically the date. Maybe it was like May the 11th. Anyway, there was a date there in the early to mid part of May to where, okay, you had to get in by that time. And if you didn't, then like I said, you cannot play this fall anywhere. Doesn't matter where you go. And so I think that's so coaches can have an idea of what they're dealing with in their roster. To sum that up, you can go get anybody that's still out there that was in that window prior to that can help you this year. I do think, Texas Tech offered a portal guy from Kentucky about a week or so ago. He was actually a track athlete and got into the portal via the track window, not the football window. But Texas Tech offered him as a receiver and eligible to do so. I think that they have decided they may use a last roster spot on an offensive lineman, though, instead of a receiver. And so if somebody's in the portal, if somebody maybe is a junior college guy, if somebody, I think they're kind of scouring for specifically offensive tackle help that would be able to come in this summer and help immediately. I say that not that you're needing to add a starter, but somebody that would be able to be eligible to play immediately, maybe is the best way to phrase that. But they've kind of snipped around some junior college prospects and guys that have multiple years left to play and things like that, because I think they would prefer more depth and talent at the tackle position.
Yeah, that seemed to be where you were last year with during the season as you're really struggling to have any depth. Because anytime you would have someone go down on the offensive line, it was full scramble mode where you're moving this guy to this position and it was a giant shuffle on the offensive line. So how much better do you feel walking into 2023 about your offensive line or even just tackle as a whole?
Well, it's the same pieces. They're just in different places and they're a year older. And I
Yeah.
think that, one of the keys to coaching is more often than not is, well, coach, or hey guys, I've got this scheme and I just need this to fit in it, this to fit in it, this to fit in it. But when you're a coach, you have to figure out ways to adjust what you're doing that put guys in a position to succeed. They didn't change anything on the offensive line, although I do think they tweaked their scheme just a little bit. But I think they feel like with now plenty of reps under their belts, that Caleb Rogers is just a better option at right tackle,
Sure.
and Monroe Mills is better at left. I think Ty Buchanan is somebody that can play either one, and I just think. But the best part about your offensive line, though, is Wilburn is more in his natural position. I just think that Rusty Stats and then Cole Spencer. I mean, you're just really salty and old now in the middle of that line, and there's going to be a price to pay because a
Mhm.
year from now, that could be one of the bigger questions on your entire team
Sure.
is you lose your center and both starting guards. And yes, you'll have Jacoby Jackson, hopefully, that inserts himself into one of those interior spots, who's going to have plenty of experience. But you see what I'm saying? It's kind of fun
Oh yeah.
right now, but it's not going to be as much fun like after their last game this year when those guys, salute you and hey man, I'm headed to the next level. But I do think their offensive line is worlds better and in a much better place for a variety of reasons than it was a year ago. I think that, as we know, you had to get real creative and you were very average up front, and they still
Mhm.
averaged 34 points a game, won 8 games, did a variety of different things. And but there, Joey would tell you that's the biggest difference on the entire team is that group. And yeah, you've added essentially a couple of new pieces and made a couple of position changes because of those new pieces. And I
Mhm.
think you're that much better for it. But I think you're still looking to try to do the Braylon Lux thing with the offensive tackle position. Braylon Lux was the DB that you added from what was it, Fresno State,
Yes.
and you added a potential starter and some quality depth and things like that. But I don't know if you're necessarily looking for that high end of a guy. You just want to you want somebody that can help you, man, that you can grow old
Right.
with a little bit.
So let's flip to the Big 12 for a little bit and then close down with some questions from the audience. Big 12 announces something that they got a little of backlash this past week, and that's Mexico. You boys like Mexico? Hope so, because the Big 12 is going to be spending some time there. A bowl, I don't think it officially, they're in talks with trying to get a bowl going, but it is official that in basketball, Kansas and Houston will play a basketball game there, a conference game in 2024. So this is Brett Yormark, the outside the box thinking, and you're stepping across borders now. Kind of, he's done so many things we've seen done at the pro level, but not at college, and this is another one of those examples.
Yeah, and unless you have different info, Woodman, I do think they are. They
Is the
have
bowl
a.
official? Okay.
I think so, but I think
Okay.
it's not till 2026.
Okay. There it is. Yeah.
We're a ways off there. I do think that they also have their way down the road on some conversations about women's basketball and about baseball as well. And so this is basically being branded as Big 12 Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be part of a series. I think what you'll see is a title sponsor, maybe, that kind of
Sure.
sponsors these games. I think there's been a lot of chatter when this was announced initially when it was floated, and then the other day when it kind of came out officially on the
Mm-hmm.
for example, like the Kansas-Houston game.
Yeah.
This is not a basketball game because I think you read the fine print and it basically says this game will count towards the conference standings. This is a league game. And I think most people go, if I find out, if I'm a Jayhawk fan, and God, thank God I'm not, because I despise all Jayhawk fans, including all the ones that you work with on a daily basis. They're arrogant and they try to play both sides and act like they're fans of other schools too. Sometimes it's really weird. And now all of a sudden they're like Kansas football fans. Never knew that before. It's funny how
that's possible.
Exactly, it's crazy. Okay, stay on topic. Lock it in, Chris.
We're good.
Yes,
We're good.
Yes, sir. Yeah, note to self.
Lock it up.
And so, but if you're a Kansas fan or a Houston fan, you're like, we better have not given up that as a home game. I mean, because that's a great game for either party to host, and I don't want to give that up. And so I think you have to remember that some of the scheduling stuff is that you're going to have home and homes with some of these schools, but then you're just going to play a one-off with the other ones. And so what I think you're going to see with like this game in particular, it's pretty clear to me. I just don't think that the Big 12 is going to come in and go, hey, Houston, sorry, but you gave up your home game, and you still have to go to Kansas. I could be wrong, but I think this was one of those one-off games. So really neither team is technically given up, a home game, and maybe they play it again next year. So if you are on that non-home and home rotation where you're just going to play every other year, maybe this is a 2-year deal where you go to Mexico in back-to-back years. And so nobody gave up a home game, or theoretically both of you gave up a home game. I don't know. Depends on how you look at it. But yeah, there's going to be some of that. And I think I heard Kirby Hocutt talk about, he did an interview, national interview last week, and he kind of talked about the business of the Big 12.
Yep.
And while people don't want to give up home games, there's also a rub here in that how much money is this worth? We all need to kind of help the team here, and it may suck a little bit to kind of take one for the team. Texas Tech, maybe you have to give up a home baseball series. Hey, Baylor, maybe you have to give up a home basketball game. I mean, they're going to put some of these more higher profile situations in Mexico. And I've even seen it to where this is a Big 12 tie-in on a bowl game. Okay. I've even seen it speculated that maybe you could have 2 Big 12 teams playing in this bowl game. We don't know what college sports are going to look like in 26.
That's true.
Yeah. But I'll say this. I hope that Brett Yormark is still the Big 12 commissioner at that point.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. And there are no guarantees, but I do hope that he's still in charge. And again, his task is trying to generate revenue. And I think that's where Monterrey and Mexico City. I mean, you realize how many people live in Mexico City, Woodman?
It's one of the largest cities in the world. So
I believe it's the 4th largest city on planet Earth. I think 22 million people live in Mexico City. I don't even know what the I don't know if that's like greater or proper or like how big of a space that is on the 22 million. But there's dollars there, or pesos, I guess, as it would be. And
I'm sure they have dollars too. Yeah,
he's done business from a boxing standpoint and UFC, and all those things. And again, I just say, if the NFL's doing something like this, I mean, odds are there's money to be made there. And so we'll see. I'm like you, though. I'd love all the context on this stuff, and we just don't know it.
No, we don't know it, but so far, and it's still very young in the Brett Yormark age of the Big 12, but coming from where you were to where Yormark has you right now, it feels like he's been King Midas at this point. Everything he's touching is a great idea and turn into gold. So we'll see. I think a lot of people are very nervous about losing a home game if that's what it ends up being. But yeah, I don't know how all of this is going to work out. We all want context. We all want to know everything right now, but unfortunately that's not the way it works. Okay, so now let's get to couple of questions, a few questions from the audience, and then we'll shut her down for this week. Landon asks, would you swap your basketball and baseball success at Texas Tech for football? So I guess your recent successes.
And I guess what I hear them saying is, would I trade some of the Omaha trips for trips to like the BCS or New Year's Six type games?
I think
because that's the equivalent in the various sports.
Mm-hmm.
And then would I trade my Final Four appearance for a playoff appearance, like basically the equivalent of TCU?
Yeah.
You win the semi and lose in the title game, which is what you did in 2019. And football is the holy grail of it's the hardest to crack this club.
No
man.
question.
I mean, it's a pretty tiny exclusive club, and it is. There's 8 to 12 schools that have basically exclusively belonged to this thing. Even Clemson is a bit of a new money club member. I mean, and TCU's not a club member. Michigan State, Notre Dame, some of those that have kind of Cincinnati, some of those that have kind of made, gotten an invite to the party, but they've just kind of been a one-off. I don't view them as I'm talking the Blue Bloods here, and I think it's the toughest club to kind of crack. And I hate to say it, but you're damn right I would trade it all. I just think if you were a member of this club, it changes everything about your athletic program and your brand. And I don't make those rules, okay? So I'm clear. I would never personally want to give my memories of the Final Four run that I personally experienced to anybody. I hold those near and dear.
Mm-hmm.
That was a special time. The year before in the Elite Eight was a special time. The Sweet 16s have been unbelievable moments. The Omaha experiences that Texas Tech was a part of. Those are, because I do think in some ways you're kind of part of that baseball club now, because you've kind of, now you're going to need to kind of continue to keep, knocking down the door a little bit, or you're going to be like, okay, that was a nice run they had, but they're not doing it consistently. But yes, to answer the question, I would trade it all for football, the football equivalent, because I think that's what funds literally everything else.
I think if you had to ask any athletic director in the country and you get them to speak off the record, absolutely, they would do it too, because it's the catalyst, it's the springboard for any sort of athletic success.
Yes, and I love college football. You kidding me? I mean, because if you're knocking down those doors, you've won a lot more conference games than what you in reality than what you've done. And so, because these are hypotheticals, and you're playing in some big time bowl games, you're going to New Orleans, you're going to Atlanta, you're going to Pasadena, you're going to, you just think about some of these different places, because the Tech fans showed up in droves to Houston last year. And so
you outnumbered the Ole Miss fans there for sure.
Yes, but if you showed up in the Cotton or the Peach or the Sugar or the Rose or whatever, I just think that this is a club you've not really been invited to, and I'd like to. Yeah, but I would trade all that for it, because I think it would benefit everything else. And it's not anti-baseball or basketball.
And you don't want it to get turned that way, but it's just it's just simply the right answer is what it is. Leah asks, who is Jack Francis with men's basketball, and what's holding up naming the remaining staff right now?
Yeah, Jack is he's a walk-on to the team. He was on the team last year. I can't remember if he actually suited out or traveled at various times, but he was just a practice player. Great kid. I think was somebody that was around all last season. That's who he is. I want to say, I'd have to go back and look to be sure, but I want to say he's from San Antonio. Played this. I hope I'm right there. I'm not misrepresenting Jack's high school career, but I think he's in the San Antonio area, I think, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, that's who that is. I think that there are each situation is different. I believe that there's somebody that's going to join the staff in early August. I think that person has got some summer responsibilities that they have to take care of before they can join the staff in an official capacity.
Yeah.
I think there's rumors of Ben McCollum. I think I think that, again, part of that is just identifying the role, because I've had everybody tell me from associate head coach to off the court role.
Yeah.
And everything in between. But I know he's had various conversations with people in and around Lubbock about various things. And then there's been people like, boy, he doesn't want to give up being a head coach. So, take that for what it's worth. But, so I think there's different reasons for some of the holdups there. But yeah, it again, you feel vulnerable. And then you're trying to add the Kaluma kid from Creighton. He goes to Kansas State. I just think, you've got to make these last two scholarships really count, because on paper, I don't know if you're going to stack up very favorably against most of the rosters in the Big 12 based on what everybody has either added or brought back.
Yeah,
these are the facts. I think that if you're somebody in the media, this is a roster that you're going to say, "Ooh, they're going to have to play really, really good defensively." But there's not a lot of experience and scoring punch. And again, you've got a little room here. You can add two players, but you're really, if you're glass half full, you're really hoping that your freshmen that are now going to be sophomores take a huge leap. Your Lamars, your Pops, your Robert Jennings, guys like that.
Yeah.
So.
Sam asked this question, Level: bigger star in the future, Josh Jung or Ludvig Aberg? That's a tough one.
It's a very great question. I love this question, and it's fun to talk about this in terms of Texas Tech athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, Woodman, but I would say that these two guys arguably play the most difficult sports to be a star in.
I would say you're probably correct. Yeah.
Because you can have a good season, you can win a tournament.
Yep.
And that doesn't make you a star.
No.
But excelling on the tour, it's such a mind game. And as clean as this kid's college career was, and it's about as clean and wholesome and award-winning as you're ever going to find. It's very difficult at that level to do it and do it consistently, to where because even the greats, even the best that have ever done it, go through these peaks and valleys to where it's like, man, is so-and-so, insert name here, ever going to win another major? Or are they done? Yeah. And it's just, we see it all the time.
All the time. Guys can have phenomenal 1
Yes.
years on the tour, single years, or a couple of years.
I mean, heck, man.
And then it goes away.
Brooks Koepka was lighting it up 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it's like, dude, he's done. And now he's back,
And now he's back. Exactly. So it's impossible to know, but man, it was a good first weekend for Aberg. I mean, he finished top 25, I believe it was, in his first pro tour. So tour event. So that's pretty amazing. But Josh Jung is on his way to being Rookie of the Year in the American League. So it's pretty awesome to see that, though. I mean,
I agree. And this is an extremely difficult question to try to answer. I will simply break the tie this way. I think Ludvig Aberg was so much better than everybody else at his age in his sport at that particular level that I'll give him a slight nod on being a star, if you will, more so than Josh. But that is not, like an indictment on anything. I mean, Josh could very well be. I mean, because let's be honest, if you're young, you just if you can make it to the All-Star game 2 to 3 times, you're kind of there. Very few guys are like superstar status. That's like a different category altogether. But you make the MLB All-Star game, which is, there's quite a few guys that get that nod. And he's still probably a season or 3 away from maybe achieving that. I don't know. We'll see.
He's got the best numbers at third base in the American League and batting average and
part of
slugging
that,
and OPS. And
part of that is a popularity contest too on how you
it
get
very much is
voted in and all that stuff. But
very
you, the point still stands. But I'll give a slight nod to Aberg.
Yeah, I think we could see multiple years where Jung is an all-star, but Coach Sands said he could absolutely see Aberg being a top 5 player in the world before too long. So that's kind of talent that Aberg is. But both are. It's a lot of fun to see all these Red Raiders succeed beyond Texas Tech, like we've got to see recently. Yeah. Well, Level, we're out of time, man.
It went quick. It went quick. Enjoyed it. And we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
I hope everybody enjoys Father's Day next weekend.
That's right.
And thank your dad out there if he's still with you, or whoever took you to all those games and you thought that they were mad at you when you were playing sports, and they really just wanted the best for you. And some dads handle it better than others, but yeah, the one that kind of took you to the practices, if it wasn't your mom, but yeah, thank that person on a weekend like next weekend, man. But enjoy it. Woodman.
Thanks, man. We'll do it again soon.
Yes, sir. We will.
That's Chris Level and Chois Woodman. It's been the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.